Read a couple books in 2022, some new, but mostly new to me. And I'd love just to tell you about my favorite ones. Let me start off with Joshua Ferris's A Calling for Charlie Barnes. This is a story about a father and son that the dad gets news that he is dying, and the father and son have to sort of figure out what that means for them. It's a book about family, it's a book about death, and you'd think it'd be really heavy, but it was really one of the funniest books I've read in a long time. I don't like to describe books as funny, but this was truly a good one. My wife and I buy each other books every Christmas, and she bought me this last year. It really hit it out of the park. When I read it, it reminds me a lot of the book Less, and that book, it really just feels like the author's having fun. I can't say enough good things about this book. If you are at all interested, I highly recommend it. I hope to write a book this good one day, this enjoyable. But yeah, I think my favorite book, Joshua Ferris's A Calling for Charlie Barnes. None of these other books are in order. They're just books that I really like, and they're organized by category. The next actually two books, The Honey Don't List and Unhoneymooners by Christina Lauren. When I'm going through kind of a really sad patch, I love to read romance, rom-coms, any kind of books like that. And these two were my first jump into Christina Lauren. I haven't read any of their books, and they were just great. They were fun, and it just reminded me a lot of the joy that I felt with rom-coms back in my childhood. Like the things and the magic that those brought, these books really made me feel. The Unhoneymooners is about two enemies that end up having to go on a honeymoon together, a fake honeymoon together, and they end up falling in love. It's fun. It's silly. It was a really fun ride. I really liked The Honey Don't List. It's like imagining if Chip and Joanna Gaines were actually hated each other behind the scenes, and their assistants are the ones that have to put them together, stitch them back together, and they end up falling in love. It's a really fun book. It's not really a spoiler to tell you how it's going to end. You kind of know where it's going, and you're just along for the ride. And that's something really comforting about knowing where a book's going to go and knowing that things are going to be okay. And I think that's a really big part of why I jumped to those. And I'm a little late on this train, but I really liked them. I really thought they were fun. I think I'll pick up the, I think it's called In a Holidays, the Christmas one next year. Yeah, I really liked it. Next one's called Rethinking Fandom by Craig Cottrell. It is a really interesting book. I heard about it from TikTok book reviewer, Schizophrenic Reads, and it's basically a guy talking about the idea of fandom and sports and what that looks like, and hoping us to re-examine our relationship to it. I thought the most interesting part of it was the part where they talked about this surge in patriotism at sporting events right after 9/11, and how a lot of that was funded by the Defense Department, and how that does that reframe how we see these military homecomings at midfield or the flyovers. The best way I can describe this book is if you have a friend who's really into sports and you went to a bar with them and they're just like breaking down these ideas that you've never thought of about these billionaires who own these teams of millionaires and how you fit into this whole system. And it may feel like you don't have any agency, but it really is interesting how so much of it is how we choose to engage with it. And I think he's hoping we reframe our thoughts around it. If any of that sounds interesting, please pick it up. I think it's a great book. I wanted all my friends to read it and we can talk about it, but that never happened. But maybe this year, maybe 2023 will be the year of our Rethinking Fandom book club. Next up is Gabrielle Zevin's Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow. I feel like the whole world talks about this book right now. It's really good. It's really fun. It is about two friends who start building video games and start a company and they're in college. And it's about their journey together to build something as their passions and their interests and the relationship changes. I think it's a really good book about crossing that threshold from a young, energetic adult into sort of an adult that has to move at a slower pace that I feel like I'm at. It reminded me a lot of Cavalier and Clay by Michael Chabon. This book is wonderful. Everyone's talking about it for a reason. Also, Kind of surprise pick. Star Wars Light of the Jedi. I didn't expect to have a Star Wars book be on my favorites of the year. I read another book called Lost Stars. It's a Star Wars book about two people finding love and romance through most of the original trilogy, and that was really good. Didn't love the ending, but I really, really liked Light of the Jedi. Charles Soule, the writer, he does such a good job at springboarding a reader from one chapter into the next. And you can tell he writes comic books, he writes a serialized format, because this book was incredibly readable. I just was so excited to read this book. It made me feel the way Star Wars movies make me feel. I love them, and I really liked it. Light of the Jedi. Now into comic books. First comic book is, I love this one so much, Always Never by Jordi Lefrab. It's a romance story told in reverse, and you see these two people from the end of their life all the way back to when they first met, and the story that tells. It's a beautiful, beautiful book. It's not super big. If you can see the art he does, and the lettering, and the colors, and the palettes, it's just a perfect little graphic novel. It's beautiful, and it's touching, and it's about love in a way that I just loved. I loved every minute reading it, and I feel like I'm going to definitely come back to it. Always Never. Great, great graphic novel, especially if you want something that's not superheroes. I really like this. This is Batman Omnibus by Scott Schneider and Greg Capullo. Both this and Always Never I heard about on TikTok by the Comics Collective. Dallas runs that, and he has changed my life with his recommendations. This is a very, very big book, you can see. So I don't read a lot of superhero comics. I'm not a person that goes to the comic shop and gets the weekly issues and keeps up a lot. So when I found that I could buy this, and it has dozens and dozens of issues, I was very, very excited. This is a lot of different storylines kind of put together, but I had the most fun reading it. You can see Greg Capullo does some of the best work right now. I just sometimes stop and look at the illustrations and hope that one day I could make something that I think is this enjoyable. This is only the first volume of the Omnibus, so there is more after this. If you're at all interested in Batman, if you don't know where to start with comics, you want a whole complete collection that doesn't require you to find issues and then back issues and know what's happening, I highly recommend this. Next one is called Murder Book by Hilary Fitzgerald Campbell. I found this book walking through my library in the news section, and I picked it up, and I haven't heard nobody talk about this book, but I really love it. I really love this book. It is a graphic memoir of Campbell looking back through her life and her love of true crime, and her mom's love of true crime, and their relationship together. And it just is a great little story, an interrogation of true crime media. I don't take it in as much as I think a lot of people, but I knew enough to keep up. And if you watch any of the Dahmer shows, or if you like My Favorite Murder, all those kind of podcasts that deal with true crime, this book is great. I love her art style. It's fun and silly, and it's very disarming for a kind of heavy subject. Pick out this book if you are a fan of true crime or you want to get into true crime. It gives a really nice history of the genre and where it has started and where it's going. My final graphic novel, my favorite comic book, is called Human Target. This is a DC story by Tom King and Greg Smallwood. Greg Smallwood, the artist, is actually where I found this book. This is a noir superhero story where you have this guy, and he basically impersonates people to protect them, to stop their assassinations, but he is poisoned, so he is about to die, and he needs to find out who killed him. This artwork and this genre of noir fiction, this is exactly what I look for. I love this setting. I love the feel. I love the tropes. If you like noir and you like comics and you're interested in good art, this is a great, great book. I actually got into it because Greg Smallwood, the artist, he did a bunch of series threads about his inspiration and his process and what he does. It's just really fun. It is not done though, so it's not an omnibus, so it's not the total story. And I was a little upset when it ended, but it's coming out this year in 2023. They're going to finish it, and I'm really, really excited about getting it. I loved it. I just love soaking in this kind of world and pretending I was a hardball detective. Next, I want to talk about short fiction with The Eternal Night at the Nature Museum by Tyler Barton. Tyler did a submission call for a literary magazine that I submitted to and got published by, and so I'm indebted to Tyler. So I bought his book and I wanted to read it. I've been trying to get into short fiction books lately, and I think they're the best kept secret right now because I have children, so it's not easy for me to always have large tome reading. And so something like short fiction where you can pull up and you can read a story and it's only a couple pages and you can sit with it. I think that is that's one of the best things you can do right now if your life is as busy as mine. This book was wonderful. This is the book I would recommend people who have not jumped into short fiction and want to. This is the one I would tell them to get. It is weird at times. It is heartfelt. It's just a very enjoyable read, and I think it's really approachable. You don't have to understand short fiction. I think these are entertaining on a level of just reading them. There's no it isn't something that you need in English class where you have to break down why it's important. These are great. Tyler Barton's Eternal Night at the Nature Museum. A lot of great stories in here. Pick it up. And my last book is Looney by Dave Housley. It's not really a book. It's more of like a zine or a chapbook. And it is the stories about the Looney Tunes, and if you got to peer inside their head and all you saw was existential dread, that would be this book. They are previously published in other places, but they all kind of come together to paint this really weird picture of the Looney Tunes and also our childhood and what it looks like having this idea of childhood now you become an adult, and how do you reckon with the absurdity of life. It's an extremely weird and silly book, but it is fun and it is great. And I love the Looney Tunes, and I love short stories that make me go, huh? And so I really recommend this one, Looney by Dave Housley. So that's it. Those are the ones that I really loved this year. I didn't read as much as I wanted to, and I'm always telling myself that I'm not reading enough. I need to read 50, I need to read 100, I need to read 200 books. But life's hard. You have jobs and families, and sometimes you just don't read a lot. I think the most important thing is just to remember the ones you read and loved. And these are the ones that'll stick with me in 2022. If there's something you enjoyed, please let me know. I'd love to take a look at it and add it to my list for next year.